After I posted my video entitled, "Joe Biden Tells Congress to Ban AR-15s and Enact Other Gun Control to Destroy the Gun Industry," I received an email from someone on Instagram by the name of Steve-MP5. The email reads, "A family member of mine is as far left as they come. I always send her your videos so she has a glimpse at the other side. I wanted you to see her comments on your last video." After reading her comments, I decided to respond to her comments in video. So let's dive right in, shall we? She starts off by saying,
"This guy's very good at parsing rhetoric, but the hilarity is he's creating his own rhetoric in the process. We could easily parse NRA rhetoric in the same way to show how it works to persuade its listeners. That the definition of rhetoric, persuasive language, and literally every politician, every corporation, and every institution uses it."
This is classic, I know we do it, but they do it too, deflection. I'm not talking about them, I'm talking about Joe Biden, his administration, and the gun control lobby. This isn't an NRA video, this is a Colion Noir video. She clearly knows the difference because she literally said he's creating his own rhetoric. I'm not creating my own rhetoric, however. I'm using persuasive language of facts. Long story short, it's easy to deflect by vilifying the NRA. However, it's not so easy to vilify the independent two-way advocate, destroying all the points made in the statement with facts, logic, data, and unrelenting sexiness. Her second point says,
"It's pretty cynical to say calling for gun control after a mass shooting is purely exploiting the situation. Why isn't it just reacting to a tragedy?"
One of the definitions of exploitation is the fact of making use of a situation to gain unfair advantage for oneself. Biden released his statement on the 3rd anniversary of the Parkland shooting. My entire video explained how none of the gun control laws Biden is pushing for would have prevented the Parkland shooting, but would arbitrarily give power to his administration to restrict our rights under the Second Amendment, while being of no benefit to anyone else other than feel-goodery. This is a textbook political exploitation of the tragedy. Not to mention, it's literally what Rahm Emanuel, former mayor of Chicago, who was notoriously anti-gun and pushes the same gun control laws as Joe Biden, literally says they should be doing.
You never want a serious crisis to go to waste. And what I mean by that, it's an opportunity to do things that you think you could not do before.
You know, we have the chief of staff for President Obama is an old friend of mine and my husband's, and was in the White House when Bill was there, and he said, you know, never waste a good crisis.
I can only say amen to everything you're saying, but also to, again, enlist people that this would be a terrible crisis to waste, as the old saying goes. We've learned a lot about what our absolute frailties are in our country when it comes to health justice and economic justice. So, you know, let's be resolved that we're going to solve those once you're elected president.
I promise you that's going to be my objective.
Her third point says,
"Gun death rates don't speak to what people are really worried about. They're not worried about gang violence or suicides. They're worried about arbitrary mass slaughter in public places like schools, malls, concerts, and movie theaters."
Well, thank you for confirming what I've been saying for almost a decade. Gun control isn't actually about saving lives, it's about making people feel safe. Thank you again for confirming that Biden and the gun control lobby only engage in rhetoric that appeals to emotions and not hard facts. Because if people were only really worried about the arbitrary mass slaughter, why are they always including those numbers of suicide and gang violence in the gun death rates? Maybe because there was a study conducted by the Rockefeller Institute of Government that found homicides account for just 0.1% of all offenses known to law enforcement, and mass shootings represent just a fraction of all homicides. The average annual victimization rate of mass shootings, meaning the rate of being injured or killed in one, is less than 0.04 per 100,000 people. Put another way, being the victim of a mass shooting is just about as unlikely as being struck by lightning, which occurred at a rate of 0.035 per 100,000 people in 2016. Over the course of your life, you are far more likely to die in a car crash or in a fire or by choking on food. The study also found that handguns were the most commonly used weapon, with at least one being used in 75.6% of events. When only a single weapon was involved, handguns were significantly more likely to be used than any other type of gun. In 28.5% of events, at least one rifle was used. To a lesser extent, 0.9%, Other types of guns, such as machine guns, were used by shooters. So if people are only worried about the less than 1% of gun deaths and handguns are being used in 75% of those gun deaths, you would have to ban the handguns to even remotely be effective. Once again, proving that these gun control laws are about eventually banning all guns. Because if they're about saving lives, simply banning AR-15s won't do anything. You'd have to ban all the guns. And for her fourth point,
she says, why are gun owners against background checks? Yeah, it's not going to prevent everything, but it might stop some of it, especially violent domestic abuse, and I really don't see the downside.
Well, we already have background checks. Gun owners are against universal background checks because they can't be enforced without a gun registry. And because even with a gun registry, universal background checks wouldn't prevent any gun deaths because criminals buy their guns illegally, the gun registry will be used to confiscate guns under the guise of, well, we did the universal background check and it didn't work, so now we have to just ban all the guns, as I laid out in my previous point. That is the downside. And for her fifth point, she says,
I don't know what to say to you about assault weapons. Clearly they have been used in some mass shootings and honestly are pretty terrifying to a lot of non-gun owning Americans. Why? Because they were designed for war, designed to kill more people faster. Outside of it being something people love as a hobby, what is the logic for having endless assault weapons in the hands of everyday people?
So first of all, the term assault weapon is a made-up term. It's designed to override the use of a semi-automatic rifle for self-defense and replace it with the idea of assaulting someone, and it has worked magnificently. That is why you say things like designed for war or designed to kill more people. The Colt AR-15 was literally designed for civilians, not soldiers. There are over 21 million AR-15s in this country, and according to the FBI, more people are killed with hands and feet every year than they are with AR-15s. More people use AR-15s to defend their lives than they are used to take them. People buy AR-15s because they are excellent for home defense, but not that great for criminals because they're so hard to conceal. And criminals rely on weapon concealability to commit their crimes effectively. Mass shootings are like airplane crashes. Incredibly rare, but when they happen, it's a big deal and they get a lot of press because they're so rare. Yet, you still fly. Keep in mind, one of the worst, if not worst, school shootings this country has ever seen was committed only with handguns. And for her sixth point, she says,
why isn't Joe trying to sue BMW? Because BMWs are not designed to kill murder, and guns are, and do at a much more regular rate. That is some peak rhetorical right there. Cheese has probably been used to kill people, hammers, Tylenol, etc. So if politicians don't call for a ban on everything that's ever been used to murder, they're hypocrites? That makes no sense. As far as I can see, guns were literally designed to kill, and when not just being used for sport, that's largely what they do.
The problem is 38,000 people die every year because of cars. That's literally the same number of people who die every year because of guns. And most of the time, it's actually higher deaths from cars. So we can just throw that whole idea that guns kill at a much more regular rate out the window. As you so eloquently put it, let's cut the rhetorical. You really don't care what guns were designed for. You just don't like guns, but you like the convenience that cars bring to your life. So you have to make a completely useless distinction like what it was designed for to justify your acceptance of one and not the other. So cars, which weren't designed to kill, kills the same number of people, if not more, as something that you claim was designed to kill. But since cars weren't designed to kill, that somehow makes them okay? No, that makes you a hypocrite. Guns are tools, the same way knives are tools. Tools have multiple uses. People use guns to hunt, for recreation, hobby, competition shooting, and most importantly, self-defense. You're so blinded by your political identity and fear that you can't see that people don't buy guns to take life, they buy guns to protect life. Do you really believe gun manufacturers sell guns so that people can go and murder other people indiscriminately? Because that's what you're saying. Lead paint wasn't designed to kill or murder, yet in 1978, the federal government banned consumer use of lead-based paint. So what a product was designed for is irrelevant, and you know it. Point number 7.
Why is there a gun industry? Have you ever read about the history of the relationship between the arms industry and the U.S. military-industrial complex?
There's a gun industry because supply and demand. People want guns for self-defense, hunting, competition, shooting, and recreation. So being a capitalist society, people make companies that make guns for people who want guns. This creates an industry. It's economics 101. Stop trying to make it seem like being an industry is some nefarious cabal. And yes, I've read the history of the relationship between the arms industry and the US military-industrial complex. But what does that have to do with the price of tea in China? We're talking about the commercial gun industry. This is a red herring. You're trying to borrow the historical vilification of the US military-industrial complex to smear the commercial gun industry to once again imply that anyone in the business of guns is somehow evil or nefarious, and it's kind of high-key fucked up. Because as I said before, people buy guns for self-defense, not to murder people. Her 8th point says,
the answer to why there needs to be a consumer market for guns seems always to come back to the Second Amendment argument of having the right to defend yourself. And again, if you're talking from the government, that's laughable. And if you mean from other people, then handguns should work just fine.
Was the Haitian slave rebellion laughable? Was the American Revolution laughable? Was the Vietnam War laughable? Is the war in Afghanistan that we've been fighting since 2001 against dudes in flip-flops and shitty AK-47s laughable? Citizens have been fighting against governments for centuries. Just because you don't have the heart to fight doesn't mean you get to take away the means to fight from everyone else who does. You call AR-15s assault weapons. You don't know nearly enough about guns to tell me and other people which guns will work just fine for our self-defense. You need to check that elitism. And for her 9th point, she writes,
what has generated in this guy a rapacious fear of being harmed, of needing to defend himself?
So in one breath, you're saying we need to ban guns because people keep getting shot by people with guns. And in the same breath, you're questioning why I feel the need to own a gun. If my concerns about being harmed are unwarranted with 400 million guns in this country, then your concern about being harmed by guns are also unwarranted. To make matters worse, you're so scared of AR-15s that you think they should be banned, but yet they account for less than 1% of gun deaths in this country. So I ask you the same question. What has generated in this woman a rapacious fear of being harmed, of needing to ban guns when she believes that my desire to own guns in self-defense is unwarranted? For her 10th point, she writes,
some would argue that as long as there is endless guns, then everybody could and should feel afraid and need to defend themselves with da-da-da-da guns. It's the perfect consumer loop.
See, the thing is, no one is making you buy a gun. You don't want a gun? Don't buy it. Just don't try to force us to live-action roleplay some adolescent ambitions of some gun-free utopian society. It's childish and disconnected from reality. No wonder you were so triggered by my critique of Joe Biden's rhetoric. You engage in the same exact rhetoric. The closest you got to even stating a fact was mentioning an antiquated military-industrial complex theory that, if we're going to be honest, the consequences of which have likely insulated you from the harsh realities of the world to such a degree that you think it's laughable for a population of people to use their guns to fight off a tyrannical government while living in a country whose independence was achieved by people taking their guns and fighting a tyrannical government. You live in a country that enshrines your ability to check your government and protect yourself to a degree that no other country in the world affords their citizens. And here you are, along with you and a bunch of other people in this country, doing their almighty best to welcome oppression because you can't or don't want to handle the responsibility of freedom. Right now, there's a culture war against the Second Amendment, which is why I need your help spreading our message to counter their message. You can help do this by leaving a comment, sharing this video, and clicking the bell and subscribe button. Let my voice be your voice, and let them know you want to keep America tactical, because the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed wasn't a suggestion, it was a directive. Also, if you're wondering where to purchase your AR-15s are essential, I will not comply. I am the militia. I lost all my guns in a boating accident, and your state-specific Keep America Tactical shirt, click the link next to my head or the link in the description section, or if you're watching this on a mobile device, tap the small triangle on the lower right-hand side of this video and click the link in the description.